Life does not wait for the timid. It crashes into you without warning, testing your strength, your patience, and your courage. Some endure silently, carrying burdens invisible to the world, while others are broken before they can even recognize the fight. But every heart has a limit, and every life has a turning point when the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Margaret Hayes had lived quietly for 72 years, her existence unnoticed, her sacrifices invisible. Yet inside her chest beat a resilience forged by decades of labor, of loss, and of love. Today that resilience would be tested like never before. The morning sun sliced through the blinds of her small apartment, illuminating dust particles that danced like forgotten memories. Margaret ran her hand over the worn countertop, feeling the grooves etched by years of careful work, of meals prepared, of bills paid with trembling hands. She had been saving for months, counting every coin, skipping necessities to secure her small home, her last link to a life that was slowly fading into memory. The property taxes were overdue and the bank was merciless. Every step toward that building felt heavier than the last. As she walked the cracked sidewalk, the city's chaos surrounded her. Cars honked, people shoved past without a glance, and yet her focus never wavered. This was not a day for distraction. This was a day for survival. Inside the bank, fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting cold shadows on faces too busy for compassion. Margaret's heart quickened as she approached the counter, the envelope of bills clutched tightly. Every eye that glanced her way felt like judgment, a silent measure of worth she had no desire to explain. The teller, a young woman with perfect makeup and impatience in her eyes, barely acknowledged her presence. "How can I help you?" she asked, tone clipped, as if the world had no time for Margaret's careful counting and trembling hands. "I'm here to pay my property taxes," Margaret said softly, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline that surged through her veins. The envelope slid across the counter, heavy with months of sacrifice, each bill a testament to endurance and dignity. The teller frowned, inspecting the bills as if they were foreign objects, and Margaret felt a flicker of the familiar frustration that life had always offered. Respect was never given lightly, and today she could feel it slipping like sand through fingers hardened by years of toil. A man's voice interrupted, sharp and commanding, cutting through the sterile hum of the bank. "Is there a problem here?" He was tall, impeccably dressed, his presence radiating authority and unspoken danger. Margaret looked up, startled, and met eyes that had seen much, judged more, and feared little. The teller hesitated, caught between fear and protocol. Margaret realized in that instant that her struggle had drawn an observer who might tip the balance, a witness to the silent battle of dignity versus indifference. The man stepped closer, his gaze locking onto Margaret with an intensity that both unnerved and reassured. It was as if he could see every ounce of her life's labor, every quiet act of endurance, every sacrifice she had made in solitude. Margaret's pulse raced, but her resolve solidified. She would not be dismissed, she would not be erased. Respect, she reminded herself, is earned, not stolen. And today she would not yield. The teller finally nodded, processing the payment, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering doubt. Margaret exhaled slowly, a small victory in a city that rarely acknowledged the struggles of its quiet citizens. The man turned, preparing to leave, but paused. "You carry yourself with dignity," he said, almost to himself. "It is rare to see that in a world that rewards noise over substance." Margaret felt a warmth she had not expected. His words were not pity, nor patronizing, they were recognition, acknowledgement of a life lived with quiet courage. As she gathered her receipt, the city outside seemed unchanged, yet inside her something had shifted. The encounter had reminded her that honor exists even in the smallest victories, even when no one else notices. Life, she realized, is not measured by wealth or power, but by the courage to endure, the strength to rise after each fall, and the quiet dignity that refuses to bow to injustice. Even as the doors closed behind her, the man's presence lingered like a shadow and a promise that sometimes recognition comes from the most unexpected places, and courage is always noticed even when unseen. Every step Margaret took away from the bank was heavier with meaning. The city might rush past, indifferent and cruel, but she carried something no one could take. A life lived with integrity, an inner strength that no circumstance could diminish. She passed the street musicians, the street vendors shouting prices, the tourists snapping photos, and yet none of it touched the quiet fire burning inside her. It was a fire built over decades, and it would not be extinguished today. Margaret paused on the corner, feeling the wind lift strands of silver hair across her face. Life had tested her in countless ways, yet she stood unbroken, resilient, ready for the next challenge. The city's chaos, the indifference of strangers, the coldness of institutions, all of it, had threatened to weigh her down. But she had learned that dignity is not given, it is defended, it is nurtured, and above all, it is carried with courage. In that moment, Margaret Hayes was more than her age, her limitations, her worries. She was a testament to resilience, a quiet reminder that even in the smallest acts of perseverance, the human spirit can shine fiercely. The bank, the city, the indifferent faces, they were all part of her journey, and she would navigate them with grace, courage, and wisdom earned through hardship. She walked toward her small apartment, each step a declaration that life might be unforgiving. Yet she would face it fully, without fear, with a dignity unshaken by circumstance. Her heart, though racing from the encounter, felt lighter. Recognition, when it came, did not have to be loud. It could be quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible. But it mattered, profoundly. And as she reached her doorstep, Margaret realized that every struggle, every sacrifice, every quiet act of bravery had prepared her for this moment, the understanding that respect, courage, and integrity are the true measures of a life well lived. Margaret entered her apartment, the familiar scent of worn wood and old books greeting her like an old friend. She dropped her bag, but the weight of the day did not lift it, pressed on her chest, heavier than the envelope of bills she had carried. Her eyes wandered to the window, watching the city pulse with indifferent energy. Each honking car, each shouting street vendor felt like a reminder. The world moves on, uncaring of the quiet battles fought behind closed doors. She sank into her chair, hands trembling slightly. Even in small victories, fear lingered. What if the next test was harsher? What if endurance was not enough this time? Memories of lost loved ones filled the room like shadows. Her parents' voices echoed, reminding her of promises made, sacrifices witnessed. Loss had taught her one lesson. Life is unrelenting, but it is also fragile, and courage is found in the smallest acts. The phone rang, startling her. Margaret hesitated, then answered. Hello. A voice, smooth and calculated, filled the line. Margaret Hayes. Yes, she said, a hint of suspicion in her tone. Who is this? There was a pause, deliberate, as if measuring her reaction. I know what you did today, the courage you showed. But courage, Margaret, can also make you vulnerable. Her heart skipped. How could a stranger know about the bank? Fear clawed at her chest, yet curiosity pushed her to listen. What do you mean? Sometimes, being noticed is the first step toward danger, the voice said. Not everyone who sees you wishes you well. Some see your strength and want to test it, or destroy it. The line went dead before she could respond. Margaret's hands shook, her mind racing. Danger recognition had never come with a warning. Could her small victory have drawn the wrong attention? She paced, trying to ground herself, feeling the tension tighten like a vice. Every step echoed the lesson life had taught her. Courage is not always rewarded, and safety is an illusion. Margaret thought of her neighbors, of the few friends who lived within reach yet were too absorbed in their own survival to notice hers. In the silence, she realized that resilience often feels like solitude. Hours passed, the city dimming into twilight. Shadows stretched across her walls, and Margaret felt both seen and invisible. The paradox gnawed at her. To endure is noble, but exposure invites consequences. Her apartment door creaked, a sound that made her heart jump. She froze, imagining intruders, threats, the abstract dangers the voice had hinted at, yet no one entered. The empty hallway seemed a warning, a mirror of her anxiety. Sitting on the edge of her bed, Margaret reflected. Life had given her a script: endure, persevere, survive. But it rarely offered clarity, only challenges that demanded courage before understanding. Fear mingled with resolve. She would not cower, but she could not ignore the lesson either. Awareness must accompany bravery. Strength without caution could become weakness. The next morning the letter arrived. Its envelope was thick, unmarked, yet heavy with purpose. Margaret hesitated, then opened it. Inside, a simple note. Your life is about to change. Be ready. No signature, no address. Just words that ignited both curiosity and dread. Margaret's heart raced. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every fiber of her being was drawn to the mystery, the challenge. She spent hours pacing, thinking, planning. Could it be a scam, a test, or a real threat? The uncertainty weighed on her, yet paradoxically it awakened something long dormant, the thrill of facing the unknown. Margaret realized that life, in all its quiet cruelty, had given her a rare gift, the opportunity to confront the unexpected. Most people live blind to danger and possibility alike. She could do neither. As evening fell, she dressed with care, choosing practical shoes and a coat that concealed both warmth and readiness. The streets were alive, indifferent, yet she moved with purpose, aware that every step might matter more than she could foresee. The city lights blurred as she walked, a stream of neon reflecting the turbulence within. Margaret's mind raced with questions. Who had sent the letter? What did they want? Was recognition always a precursor to peril? The voice from the phone echoed in her memory. Some see your strength and want to test it, or destroy it. She shivered, feeling the weight of every decision she had ever made, every act of courage that had brought her here. Margaret paused at a street corner, listening to the rhythm of the city. Every passing car, every shout, every laugh of strangers carried meaning she could not decode. Yet she felt a strange alignment. Her courage had drawn her into a new chapter, one she could neither avoid nor fully control. She arrived at the small cafe the letter had mentioned, the dim lights inside promising both anonymity and exposure. Margaret hesitated at the door, each heartbeat a drumbeat of anticipation and fear. Inside, a man sat alone, back straight, eyes scanning the room with precision. Margaret knew instinctively, this was the person who had sent the letter. Recognition, confrontation. challenge all, converged in a single moment. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Margaret felt both dread and exhilaration. Every step toward the man was a negotiation between fear and courage, past and present, survival and destiny. "Margaret Hayes," he said, voice calm but commanding, as if reading her inner conflict. "You were meant to receive the letter. Not everyone does. Not everyone survives what comes next." She swallowed hard, her resolve tightening. "What comes next?" "That," he said, motioning to the city beyond the window, "depends on your strength, your choices, and your understanding that life tests us in ways we can never predict. Only the prepared survive." Margaret felt the truth of his words pierce her. Life was indeed a relentless test, and today, she realized, the stakes had become more than bills, more than recognition. Survival was not merely physical, it was moral, emotional, and spiritual. The man's eyes met hers, unwavering, and she understood that courage was not a shield from danger, but a compass through it. Margaret Hayes had stepped onto a new path, where every decision, every heartbeat, carried the weight of consequence. Margaret's hand lingered on the cafe doorframe, hesitating. Fear surged, but beneath it, a pulse of determination drove her forward. She had endured enough to know that hesitation could be costlier than risk. The man's gaze held a quiet intensity, one that seemed to pierce her defenses. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. We have little time, and much to discuss." Margaret obeyed, heart hammering. Each breath felt heavy, each second stretching into eternity. The cafe's mundane hum contrasted sharply with the storm raging inside her. "You've been noticed," he said, eyes unblinking. "Not by chance, not by luck. Your choices, your courage, they have set events into motion you cannot yet fully comprehend." Her mind raced, memories colliding with possibilities. Recognition had always been double-edged. She had thought survival was the ultimate goal, but now she realized survival could be the prelude to far greater trials. "Who are you?" she asked, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Why me? Names are trivial," he replied. "What matters is potential, and your potential has drawn attention. Some will seek to exploit it, some to destroy it. Only those who understand themselves survive." Margaret felt a chill. Exploitation, destruction, each word carried gravity. She understood now that courage alone was insufficient. Insight, strategy, and the unflinching gaze at reality were just as vital. "I've faced danger before," she said, "but nothing like this. I don't even know what I'm facing." "Exactly," he said. "And therein lies the first lesson. Awareness precedes control. You cannot master what you do not comprehend. You cannot survive what you do not anticipate." Her thoughts turned inward. Life had taught her resilience, yet wisdom had often arrived too late. Could she now combine them? Could courage be married to clarity before calamity struck? Outside, the city pulsed indifferently, yet within these walls, destiny felt tangible, almost tactile. Margaret sensed that the ordinary world she had known was dissolving into something new, something uncharted. "Will I be safe?" she asked, almost whispering. Safety had been a fragile illusion her entire life. Now it felt more like a memory than a possibility. "Safe," he repeated, eyes narrowing. "There is no true safety, only preparation. You are here to learn, to grow, and to make choices that will shape what comes next. Fear is not the enemy, it is the compass." Margaret swallowed, considering the weight of those words. Fear had always been a shadow, now it was a guide. Every beat of her heart, every tremor in her hands, became a signal, a measure of readiness. "What must I do?" she asked. The question felt small, yet monumental. The answer would redefine the life she had known. "You must see clearly," he said, "not just others, but yourself. Every decision, every action, carries consequence. Courage without insight is recklessness. Strength without understanding is vulnerability." She felt the truth of his words resonate deep within. Life had been teaching her this lesson in whispers, in heartbreaks and small triumphs. Now the lesson arrived in full force. Margaret realized that the envelope, the phone call, the letter, these were not threats but invitations. The world, in its unpredictable cruelty, offered challenges that demanded awakening. The man leaned forward, voice soft but insistent. "Consider your life a series of tests. Some are obvious, some invisible. Only those who recognize the nature of the challenge can endure it." She nodded slowly, the weight of responsibility pressing on her. Every instinct screamed caution. Every memory reminded her of past missteps. Yet beneath it all, determination flared. "Will I fail?" she asked, her voice trembling. The thought of failure had haunted her since childhood, a shadow that shaped her courage. "Perhaps," he said. "But failure is not final. Insight gained from failure is survival. Every mistake becomes a lesson if you are willing to see it. Courage is measured not by success, but by persistence in the face of unknown consequence." Margaret thought of the letters, the phone call, the city that seemed to hum with hidden currents. Persistence. This was the thread connecting past, present, and future. She closed her eyes briefly, letting tension melt, focused, sharpening. The fear that had threatened to paralyze her became a tool, a signal to act with purpose and clarity. Where do I start? She asked, opening her eyes to meet his unwavering gaze. Each moment felt like a pivot, a choice between stagnation and progression. You start by observing, he said, by questioning, by refusing to assume that the world's surface tells the truth. Most are blind to danger and opportunity alike. Awareness transforms vulnerability into power. Margaret leaned back, letting the weight of his words settle. Awareness, courage, insight, they were not separate. They were threads of a single fabric, one she must now weave consciously. Outside, the city lights glimmered like a constellation of challenges and possibilities. Margaret felt the paradoxical mix of fear and exhilaration, the acknowledgement that life's greatest tests were not distant, but already here. She rose, voice steady. I am ready to see. The declaration carried more than defiance. It carried acceptance of responsibility and an embrace of the unknown. The man nodded, eyes softening. Then the path begins. Your life will no longer be ordinary. Danger and revelation will intertwine. Courage, wisdom, and clarity must guide every step. Margaret stepped toward the door, the city waiting. Each step resonated with determination. She understood now. Survival was not passive, it was active. It demanded engagement, and it demanded that she confront herself fully. The cafe door closed behind her with a decisive click, and Margaret Hayes felt the first weight of true challenge settle on her shoulders, a weight she was ready to bear. Margaret moved through the city streets with deliberate caution, each shadow and echo sharpening her awareness. She felt the invisible currents of possibility and peril weaving around her. The night air was sharp, almost electric, as if the city itself whispered warnings only she could hear. Every step seemed heavier, yet more purposeful. She recalled the man's words, courage and clarity must guide every step. Yet clarity demanded more than focus, it demanded surrender to the unknown without losing herself. A sudden movement in an alley drew her attention. She paused, muscles tensed. Danger could hide anywhere, and yet hesitation could cost her more than action. The figure emerged, a courier, silent and deliberate, holding a small envelope. Margaret's pulse quickened. Instinct told her this was no coincidence. She took the envelope, feeling the weight of expectation. Every interaction now carried potential consequence, a test disguised as chance. The note inside contained a single instruction: trust the path that frightens you most. Margaret's mind raced. Fear, once a limiter, now became a compass. She realized that courage without fear was meaningless. Only those who faced the deepest fear could navigate the labyrinth of choice that awaited. A voice behind her made her freeze. Margaret Hayes, it said softly, almost familiarly. She spun around to see a man whose eyes mirrored the city's shadows, knowing, patient, dangerous. You are moving too cautiously, he said. Yet caution is wise. The trick is to act decisively when indecision seems safest. That is the paradox of survival. Her thoughts whirled. Every lesson she had learned, resilience, patience, observation, suddenly seemed insufficient. She would have to synthesize them, not just apply them. The courier vanished into the night, leaving Margaret with the note and a renewed sense of urgency. She felt the weight of unseen eyes, watching, testing, measuring. Every corner held potential risk. Every passerby could be a signal or a threat. Awareness had to become instinct, and instinct had to merge with courage. She recalled past mistakes, every misstep and lost opportunity, recognizing that each had honed her, made her sharper, more prepared for the trials ahead. Margaret's hand tightened around the envelope. She understood that fear was not merely a warning, it was an invitation, a guide to the next step in the uncharted path before her. The city seemed to shift, alleys elongating, lights flickering, as if reality itself were reshaping to test her perception. She moved carefully, but decisively. Questions arose in her mind. Who watched her? Who orchestrated these tests? And most importantly, what defined the line between survival and surrender? The man's earlier words echoed. Insight gained from failure is survival. Every mistake could be transformed into knowledge, every fear into direction. Margaret reached a small bridge overlooking the river, water reflecting the moon's pale light. She paused, contemplating the choices ahead, the risks she could not yet measure. A sudden splash caught her attention, an object thrown into the river. Curiosity mingled with caution. To investigate could be perilous, but ignorance might cost more. She approached the edge and saw a small box floating. Pulling it out, she felt the pulse of destiny, a choice, immediate, unavoidable. Inside the box was a key and a note. This opens what you fear most. Courage now will define you. Margaret's mind raced, fear coiling tightly around excitement. Courage without knowledge is reckless, she thought. Knowledge without courage is useless. She would need both, and quickly. Her reflection in the water seemed to question her. Are you ready to confront what you dread most? The city's silence answered with ambiguity, neither encouraging nor warning. Margaret understood then that fear, clarity, and choice were inseparable. Only by embracing all three could she navigate the path before her. The river's current tugged at the box, a metaphor she could not ignore. Life's challenges would pull, resist, and sometimes threaten to sweep her away. Yet she would not be passive. Each action, each decision would assert her presence in a world that seemed designed to test her limits. The key in her hand symbolized more than access, it represented responsibility. What she unlocked would not be reversible, and consequences would ripple outward. Margaret's thoughts turned inward. Every past failure, every heartbreak, every triumph had led to this precise moment. She was both the observer and participant of her unfolding destiny. The night deepened, shadows stretching, but she moved forward with a steady resolve. Fear had become a companion, a teacher, a lens through which clarity emerged. She pressed the key into her palm, feeling its cold weight, and whispered, "I am ready." The declaration carried not defiance alone, but acceptance of the unknown, responsibility, and purpose. Each step toward the unknown felt heavier, yet more deliberate. Margaret realized that true courage was not absence of fear, but persistence in spite of it. The city watched silently as she approached the door that the key would unlock. The air hummed with tension, destiny awaiting her choice. She paused for one final breath, acknowledging the paradox. Every step into fear was simultaneously a step into power. Only by confronting the deepest dread could she claim mastery over herself. Margaret inserted the key, turning it with deliberate care. The lock clicked, a sound resonating with both danger and promise. The door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond a world where courage, insight, and choice would be tested without mercy. Margaret stepped inside, feeling the weight of her journey, knowing that every challenge ahead was not merely external, it was a confrontation with her own limits, her own fear, and her own potential. The path forward was uncertain, perilous, and filled with revelation. Yet she moved without hesitation, fully aware that the greatest trial was not what awaited her but the resolve within herself to endure and act. The room inside was dimly lit, shadows pooling in the corners like secrets waiting to be uncovered. Margaret's breath echoed softly, mingling with the silence. Every instinct screamed caution, yet hesitation could cost her more than recklessness. The first step inside felt heavier than any journey she had taken before. A sudden metallic sound reverberated across the floor. Margaret froze, listening. The sound repeated, deliberate, controlled. Someone was here, waiting. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in darkness. The face was obscured, but the presence was unmistakable. Power, danger, and a test that could not be ignored. "You came willingly," the figure said, voice calm yet laced with menace. Few possess the courage to enter what they fear most. Margaret's pulse quickened. She felt the weight of every past choice, every risk, every moment of courage that had led her to this confrontation. Nothing was random, nothing accidental. The figure extended a hand holding a small device. "This is the measure of resolve. To proceed you must choose, confront your fear directly or avoid it forever." Margaret's mind raced. Every instinct screamed confrontation, yet logic whispered of unseen dangers, traps hidden in shadows, consequences unpredictable. Fear twisted inside her, intimate and personal, was no longer abstract, it was real, immediate, and alive. Courage now was an action, not an idea. She stepped forward, the floor creaking under her weight, and took the device. Its surface was cold, smooth, unyielding like the reality she was about to face. The figure spoke again. "Each choice has a cost. Some costs are immediate, some delayed, but none are without consequence. You must decide." Margaret's thoughts drifted to the lessons of the city, the alley, the river, the key. Fear was never to be eliminated, only understood and wielded. The decision felt monumental. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum in the cavernous space, a reminder that time and choice were intertwined. She pressed a button on the device, and the walls shifted. The room expanded impossibly, forming corridors, doors, and illusions that blurred reality and perception. Every corridor held a fragment of her past, a memory, a failure, a triumph. The path forward demanded acknowledgement of all she had endured. Margaret realized then that the trial was not merely external, it was a confrontation with her own history, with every doubt and every moment of resolve. A whisper echoed in the shifting corridors. "You carry both light and shadow. To proceed, you must embrace both." She moved cautiously, yet decisively, each step revealing new challenges, locked doors, misleading passages, echoes of voices that questioned her purpose. Fear became a guide, highlighting the path she might otherwise overlook. Each encounter tested her perception, her judgment, her patience. A mirror appeared, reflecting not only her image but every choice she had made. The reflection questioned her. "Are you the person you claim to be, or merely a shadow of survival?" Margaret faced the reflection, acknowledging every flaw, every hesitation, every act of courage. Acceptance was the key she had been seeking all along. She turned from the mirror and found a stairwell leading downward. Each step resonated with finality, as if descending not only physically but into the essence of her own courage. At the bottom, a door awaited, etched with symbols that seemed both alien and familiar. Fear tightened around her chest, but resolve held her steady. The door opened to a vast chamber, empty except for a single chair in the center. Upon it sat a figure she could not yet recognize, yet instinct told her this was the culmination of all trials. "You have come far," the figure said, voice calm yet undeniable. "But the greatest challenge is not what stands before you, it is within you." Margaret understood immediately. Every fear, every hesitation, every lesson had been leading to this moment of introspection, this confrontation with her deepest self. She stepped forward, the chair now looming like a sentinel of truth, courage and fear, intertwined, inseparable, defining her every action. Sitting down, she faced the emptiness, the challenge, the truth. It was not about victory over another, it was about mastery over herself. The figure spoke one final time. Those who survive do not merely endure, they understand. Fear is the path, courage the vessel, choice the compass. Margaret felt a profound clarity, a stillness in the storm of her own emotions. The chamber no longer threatened it, illuminated, revealing the structure of her resolve. The device in her hand pulsed, signaling completion, yet she knew the journey was ongoing. Each trial, each fear, each choice would ripple forward, shaping not only her destiny but the measure of her character. She rose from the chair, the room solidifying around her, reality resuming its familiar contours. The city outside awaited, unchanged yet entirely different in meaning. Margaret stepped back into the night, shadows now companions rather than threats, clarity replacing confusion, and purpose tempered with caution. Each breath was deliberate, each step conscious. She carried with her the paradoxical truth. Courage is not absence of fear, but the act of moving forward despite it. She understood that every future choice would demand the same blend of insight, courage, and acceptance, and that life itself was the ultimate test of these intertwined forces. Margaret moved into the darkness with a sense of completion and anticipation. The trials had changed her, yet the journey was far from over. Outside, the city hummed, alive with unknown challenges, possibilities, and the subtle weight of destiny. She was ready not for the absence of fear, but for the mastery of it. Every shadow, every echo, every passing face could now be read as part of a larger narrative, a narrative in which she was both participant and observer. Margaret walked on, knowing that courage, insight, and choice would forever define her path, and that the next trial would be no less real, no less demanding, and no less revealing than the last. The city's night air felt different now, heavier yet clearer, as if every shadow held a secret waiting to reveal itself. Margaret's steps echoed, steady and deliberate. Every corner could hide a threat, every alley a lesson. She knew now that danger was not external, it was a reflection of her own unresolved fears. A sudden rustle from above made her look up. A figure dropped silently, landing just ahead, familiar yet altered, like a memory twisted by time. "You've come far," the figure said, voice almost a whisper, yet cutting through the night. "But the ultimate test lies ahead. Are you ready to face what you fear most?" Margaret felt a chill, not from the wind, but from the recognition. This was not merely a trial, it was the confrontation of her deepest truth. Her mind flashed back to every choice she had made, each act of courage, each moment of hesitation, each decision that had defined her. Fear tightened its grip, but she realized that fear was not her enemy, it was her guide, her mirror, and her challenge all at once. The figure moved closer, revealing a mask of familiarity. It was herself or what she might have become under different choices, a shadow of regret, an unresolved anger. "You cannot defeat me," the shadow said, "not with swords, not with cunning. Only by understanding, by integrating your fear into yourself, will you prevail." Margaret's breath caught. Every lesson, every trial had led to this intimate confrontation. There was no escape, no trick, no advantage other than clarity. She faced the shadow, steadying her mind, accepting the truth. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. The shadow lunged not with violence, but with accusation, each movement a reflection of doubt, guilt, and regret she had carried for years. Margaret responded not with force but with recognition. "I see you. You are part of me, not separate. I cannot destroy you, but I can understand you." The shadow paused as if struck. Understanding, acknowledgement, and acceptance had a power no physical action could rival. A subtle change occurred. The shadow's aggression softened, its form flickering between menace and recognition. Margaret felt the weight of her own past lighten slightly. "You are stronger than you realize," the shadow murmured. "Not because you overcame me, but because you embraced me." Margaret took a step forward, feeling the paradox. Embracing fear did not weaken her. It grounded her, giving clarity and direction. The night around them seemed to respond, wind whispering like voices of the past, present, and future intertwined in a single melody of understanding. Each step she took solidified her resolve. Fear was not an obstacle but a teacher. Courage was not the absence of doubt but the presence of discernment. The shadow extended a hand, a gesture of truce, of acknowledgement, of unity. Margaret reached back, fingers brushing. The connection was electric, transformative. The figure dissolved into the night, leaving only the echoes of its lessons, each one embedded deeply within Margaret's consciousness. The city's streets stretched before her, familiar yet entirely new. Each shadow held stories, each light revealed possibilities, each step carried meaning. Margaret realized that every challenge, every trial, every fear faced and integrated was a step toward mastery not over others, but over herself. She walked onward, the weight of the night now a source of wisdom, the echoes of the trials a guide for decisions yet to come. A sudden clarity washed over her. Life itself was a series of choices, each intertwined with fear, courage, and consequence, demanding awareness and acceptance. She paused at a crossroads, feeling the hum of the city pulse beneath her feet. Each direction a narrative of its own, each choice a reflection of inner truth. Margaret understood that true courage was not heroic acts in isolation, but the continual willingness to face uncertainty with integrity and awareness. The wind shifted, carrying whispers of past trials. Reminders that survival alone was not sufficient. Insight and compassion defined enduring strength. Every footstep resonated, affirming the intertwining of action and reflection, decision and consequence, courage and fear. The city had not changed, yet Margaret had. Her perception, sharpened by experience, now allowed her to navigate not just streets, but the intricate maze of life itself. A distant light flickered, drawing her gaze. It was neither threat nor promise, but a symbol. Clarity arises only when one faces the darkness within. She moved toward it, carrying the knowledge that life's ultimate tests are not merely external, they are internal, continuous, and infinitely revealing. Margaret understood that each encounter, each shadow, each echo of fear was a mirror, reflecting choices and guiding growth, demanding both courage and understanding. The city breathed around her, alive with untold stories, yet she walked with purpose, a harmony of insight, courage, and acceptance accompanying each step. Every shadow she passed now seemed a companion rather than an adversary. Each echo a reminder of resilience and self-knowledge, each choice a testament to her journey. She knew the night would bring more trials, more reflections, more moments demanding courage, tempered with wisdom. And she was ready not for conquest, but for understanding. Margaret continued into the night, a figure transformed, carrying the paradox of fear and courage, of choice and consequence, of action and introspection, fully aware that life's greatest journey was the mastery of self. Dawn approached, the first pale light brushing the edges of the city. Margaret felt the weight of the night still lingering, yet a calm resolve accompanied her every step. The streets, once menacing in shadows, now seemed alive with possibility. Each crack in the pavement, each flicker of neon, held meaning she had never noticed before. Her journey had been more than survival. It had been a transformation, an education in courage, in fear, in the intricate architecture of the human heart. A familiar figure appeared ahead, not a shadow this time, but someone entirely human, someone she had trusted, someone who had betrayed, someone who had reminded her of fragility. "You made it through," the figure said quietly. "But did you understand why it was necessary?" Margaret met their gaze. Yes, it wasn't just about facing them, or even me. It was about embracing every part of myself, the doubts, the fears, the mistakes, and the courage that rose despite them. The figure nodded. Few realize that the greatest battles are not fought with fists or weapons, but with awareness and choice. Margaret felt a strange relief, as if every burden she had carried had been acknowledged, seen, and honored. Recognition itself had a power stronger than any confrontation. The city around them stirred with life. A child laughed somewhere in the distance, a reminder that joy persists even in the aftermath of darkness. She thought of all the moments she had hesitated, all the decisions she had questioned. Each one had led her here. Each one had shaped the clarity she now held. "I understand now," she said softly. "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the embrace of it. Wisdom is not the absence of error, but the reflection upon it." The figure smiled faintly. "And compassion. Have you discovered that?" Margaret paused. Compassion for herself, for those who had hurt her, for the unseen and unheard. She realized it was the ultimate strength, the anchor amid chaos. She continued walking, the figure falling behind, no longer a shadow, no longer a threat, just a witness to the journey she had completed. Every step resonated with intention, each movement an affirmation of self-awareness. Margaret felt a profound connection to the world, a sense of belonging that transcended fear. She paused at a bridge overlooking the river. The water reflected the morning light, shimmering like fragments of every choice, every fear, every triumph she had known. The reflection was perfect, yet fluid, reminding her that life itself was not fixed, but constantly evolving, and so was she. Margaret realized that endings are illusions. Every conclusion is a doorway to another chapter, another confrontation, another revelation waiting to unfold. The city's hum filled her senses, no longer oppressive, but instructive. Each sound, each shadow, each flicker of light was a teacher in disguise. She thought of the people she had met, the lessons they carried unwittingly, the mirrors of humanity they had held up to her. Margaret understood that no one truly walks alone. Even in solitude, our fears, choices, and reflections accompany us, shaping our courage and insight. A sudden gust of wind carried petals from a nearby tree, swirling around her like reminders of impermanence and beauty coexisting. She bent to touch one, feeling the delicate texture, the fragility, the life it had carried. Even the smallest encounter held a universe of meaning. Margaret's heart swelled with gratitude for the darkness that had challenged her, for the shadows that had revealed truth, for the city that had tested her limits. She continued across the bridge, each step deliberate, each breath a meditation, each thought a conscious choice toward understanding. The sun rose fully, painting the skyline with warmth and clarity. Margaret felt no triumph over others, only over the self she had feared, doubted, and resisted. She realized that life's ultimate lesson is not control, nor victory, but harmony between fear and courage, doubt and insight, action and reflection. Margaret stopped at the bridge's center, looking at the river flowing endlessly beneath. She understood. The journey never truly ends. Growth, reflection, and courage are continuous, eternal. A gentle smile touched her lips. She felt whole, not because life had been easy, but because she had embraced its complexity, its unpredictability, its depth. She took one final deep breath, feeling the pulse of the city, the rhythm of life, the resonance of choice, and stepped forward with unwavering certainty. Margaret knew now that true strength is invisible, residing in quiet awareness, in acceptance of self, in courage born of understanding, in compassion unbound by fear. The morning sun reflected on the water, and Margaret walked into it, carrying every lesson, every fear, every triumph, fully aware that each step was the story itself, each choice a testament to the mastery of life. And in that moment she realized that the journey had always been inside her, waiting for acknowledgement, for courage, for understanding. Every shadow, every echo, every trial had led her to this realization. Life is not survived, it is understood, it is embraced, and it is lived fully. The city stretched infinitely, yet Margaret moved with clarity, every heartbeat aligned with the lessons of the night, ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing she was never truly alone.